going, guys? Today we're going to be talking about my experience shooting with the Canon R5. So I've been shooting with this camera for about 2 months now, and I have to say it's one seriously impressive piece of technology. So the interesting thing about this camera is it was released in July of 2020, so we're coming up on 1 year since the initial launch of this camera. And the reason why I didn't pick it up right away and a lot of other people didn't is because of some issues that it originally had. The largest one being overheating, and from initial reports of people testing out the camera, they said this was a major issue, and that's why I held off on buying it until about 6 months ago. Canon worked hard on updating the firmware of the camera to make sure it doesn't overheat as often as it used to, and I have to tell you, in the 2 months that I've owned this, never has it once overheated and stopped recording. Never have I gotten that message, ever. I've shot with this out in the Florida sun in an 85-degree day in direct sunlight for several hours shooting in 4K. Never had any issues. I have not done as much testing with the 8K, which that's one of the specs of this camera. It can shoot up to 8K 12-bit RAW. This can also do 4K up to 120 frames per second, but you also have the options of 23, 976, 24, 25, 29.97 and 59.94. Absolutely mind-blowing specs for a mirrorless camera of this size. Now I'm shooting this video on the Canon C70. I've made a couple videos on that camera, you can check them out up there. The C70 does not even have as extreme of specs as this guy. The C70 can't do 8K, can do 4K 120, which is also very impressive, but this guy in terms of just max resolution is higher than Canon's entry-level cinema camera. There's a whole bunch of other comparison things which I'd love to get into in another video. We're just gonna be focusing on the R5 today. All right, so overheating was my biggest concern, I have to tell you now. Really have not run into that issue yet. I also have not even gone and done a firmware update. I just got this out of the box and I've been traveling a lot, so I haven't even looked into that. But I haven't had the need to really update the firmware yet because it's been working exactly like I want it to. I'm guessing the more recent production models of this camera, they have implemented that new firmware that does not overheat as often, so that is very convenient. All right, so the second issue that sort of held me off to buying the camera until now was that it uses an RF mount, and there aren't that many RF lenses yet, and there actually is a shortage of RF to EF adapters. All of the Canon adapters were all sold out, and there were only these third-party adapters which had some mixed reviews. I got this one, which is the Velo EF/EFS lens to RF mount adapter, and I've honestly been very impressed. I originally was planning to just get this as a temporary one and then upgrade to the Canon one later on, but I ended up just keeping this because I like it so much. The contact points on both the camera and the lens is very sturdy. It does not wiggle around at all, which I know is some issues with some of the cheaper ones. This is very well made, and it even has a tripod thread on the bottom and a little adapter to mount this on something like a Joby GorillaPod, or even if you just have this on a tripod and you want to balance it properly. Because this camera is so lightweight, this little adapter piece allows you to move the center of gravity in more of the center so that you're able to balance this camera properly. I'll leave a link down below to this Velo adapter if you want to check it out, along with all of the camera gear that I'm using. I've been debating if I should transition my whole collection of lenses over to RF now that the C70 and the R5 use RF mounts, but I have held off so far, partially because the C70 has the 0.71 times focal reducer, which makes it full frame, which is awesome, and I've just kind of been content with this setup. So as of right now, I have not switched over to RF, but that really is the future. Canon is discontinuing a lot of their EF lenses. They're moving all of it over to RF. I'm just really waiting for them to make some even better, hopefully more cinema geared RF lenses. The ones that they have do work well for video applications, but we'll see what they come out with in the future, because hopefully they'll be great for video applications. That said, my old EF lenses have been working very well with the autofocus of this camera, which is very impressive. I've been shooting on the 1DX Mark II for 3 years now, and this autofocus is even better than the 1DX Mark II. It has eye autofocus, which is a feature that only was in Sony cameras, where instead of just getting face autofocus, it'll actually pick out the eye and focus on the eye. So it is super, super sharp, which is necessary if you're shooting in 4K or even 8K. When you have that much resolution you can crop in, you need it to be perfectly in focus. And that's why I'm very happy with this autofocus. In terms of media storage, I've only been using the SD card slot. I have not used the CF Express. I actually am using the Lexar V60 256GB SD card, which if you watched the C70 video, I told you not to buy the Lexar cards because they do not work with the C70. And I bought the Pro grade cards for the C70. Those have been working fine. And I had this guy left over. And I said, you know what? Let me try it with this camera. And it actually works very well. The Pro grade cards do also work in this camera, and those have a faster write and transfer speed. So if you're really looking for a fast sort of workflow, those would be the best ones, but the Lexar card does work. Now you can only use SD cards up to 4K resolution. If you want to use 8K, you have to use the CF Express card slot. In terms of design, I've gotten quite used to it. I have fairly large hands, so it does feel small, which can be good, but like my 1DX and the C70 have much larger grips that feel a little bit more sturdy in the hand. This is very compact, so you don't quite have as much of a grip on it, but if you have smaller hands, like this will be just fine. The flip out screen is very durable, and the touchscreen is fantastic. Reminds me of the Canon 80D days. That was where my career started. You've got all the ports that you need on the side: mic, headphone, USB, HDMI, and a flash. Interestingly enough, they moved the video recording button to the top, which this actually took me a little bit to get used to because I'm used to it being on the back, the start stop button right back here. That's no longer where it is, it's on the top. It is not too far from the shutter button, so it works pretty well, but it just took a little bit to get used to. Also with the mode system, that also took me a minute to get used to because I'm used to just flipping a little switch to go into video mode. Here you have to go into mode and then press info and it will switch it over to video and photo, which works well. It's just a little bit slower. I haven't looked at custom programming a button, but I believe you could do that as well. Speaking of photos, 45 megapixel still images. The resolution is gorgeous. This is a full frame camera, so the low light resolution you're gonna get is some of the best I've seen out of any Canon camera. Alright, so who is this camera built for? I would say this is for the professional / very experienced hobbyist, photographer, or filmmaker. Definitely if you're planning to travel a lot, this fits great in my Pelican case. So if you're a documentary filmmaker or a wedding filmmaker, something like that, fantastic. I have used this as a vlogging camera and it works great with the flip out screen. Just have a little mic on top, fabulous for that. This is probably my all-around favorite camera to use for YouTube. As you know, I have used my C70 a lot for that, but the C70 is really geared towards productions of films and stuff like that. It's great for YouTube, but it's a little overkill. You know, you're not gonna get the full quality on YouTube. The R5 hits all of your top specs for resolution. The image looks great with the beautiful Canon colors. Workflow is just very convenient. The file sizes aren't too large. They're quite manageable to edit on my laptop. And it also uses the same LPE6 batteries that I've been using for the past 5 years on Canon DSLR cameras. So I have quite a few of those. If you're looking to buy the R5 and you had some of those concerns of, does it sound too good to be true? Are there still issues with the mounting and the overheating and all the new camera stuff? I can tell you confidently, this camera has surpassed all of my expectations of what I wanted to get out of it, and it continues to blow me away. Once again, the links to everything I'm using in this video are down in the description below. If you enjoy this content and would like to learn more about cameras and filmmaking and all this fun stuff, consider subscribing. Thank you all for watching, and as always, don't forget to keep it pro. Hey, did you guys check out the new merch? Designed it myself. It's got the logo right there and just Pro DSLR. Link in the description. If you want to check it out. Peace.